Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, Furukawa pulls the trigger on the starter pistol. We can officially speculate about the Switch 2. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as I'm always joined, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. We've got a good show for you today. We're going to be talking about the news from the week, including Nintendo finally officially acknowledging the existence of a next-generation Switch. And then on Thursday, we're celebrating the one-year anniversary of Tears of the Kingdom by ranking the entire Zelda series. Mark, in the meantime, how's it going?
It's going great. I've been catching up on the most recent season of Survivor.
Okay, yes.
And in one of the earlier episodes, two of the people kind of like bond, are on the island together. They're you must have so much just free time just hanging around.
Yeah, a lot of downtime, yeah.
And so they
have craft services on Survivor? Or is
they
that
don't have
like
craft
kind of
services.
Against the spirit of the game?
Yeah, kind of against the spirit of the game. They don't even give them food anymore.
Okay.
Like they don't.
They used to give them like
they used to give them
like
rice,
a Starbucks gift card.
Yeah. And so two people on the island, by passing the time, one of them is a big like metalhead, and the other one is.
You're referring to the Ninja Turtles villain?
I am, of course. Metalhead, and then the other one is a big Taylor Swift fan.
Okay, yeah.
And so they pass the time. They like have a contest. They're like, who can the metalhead is naming Metallica songs.
Oh, great.
The other person is naming Taylor Swift songs.
Right.
And they're going back and forth until one of them runs out of like songs.
Yeah.
What is a band for you? Like if that was a game you were going to play, what band would you choose, do you think?
Let's see. I mean, realistically, probably the Beatles or Weezer.
The Beatles was my go-to.
I feel like you could name a lot of Beatles songs.
Yeah.
And you could also just like kind of stumble your way through phrases that sound like Beatles songs.
And to the somebody who's not a Beatles file, they might buy it.
Yeah, they may have no idea. I also feel like I could do it pretty well with like Ben Folds and Ben Folds 5.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I could do that for a while.
Yeah, I guess you would want somebody that has like a vast discography. Like Metallica, has a huge amount. Although I guess like Taylor Swift, obviously has a body of work,
right?
But I guess what I'm getting to is like the Beatles
poet department. Is that what it's called?
I think so.
It is 38 songs long.
So no, you're totally right. I was just thinking like the Beatles.
It's finite,
It's finite, but they had a lot of releases in the time that they were together.
But like over the course of a decade.
Yeah.
And then after that, you got to start Taylor Swift's career at this point is longer than the Beatles were.
Yeah.
Around.
But I think probably the Beatles is what I would feel the most comfortable with.
Or, of course, Real Big Fish. I could go for a nice long time.
Well, a vast discography to pull from.
And I also think that Bare Naked Ladies I could go for a while on Bare Naked Ladies.
I really only know Stunt.
I
don't know a lot of their other stuff.
It's Maroon is great. Everything to Everyone is great. These are good records to check out. But that's not what this show is about. Mark, how many of our episode names do you think you could if the task was episodes of NCS and you have to give the full title?
Oh, a title. Well, so news episodes probably out for the most part.
Right, because I forget about the news episodes the second we're done recording them.
and if we're doing the full title and it had to include the date, there's just no way.
Right, there's no way.
I think maybe, I don't know. I was gonna I was gonna give myself like some amount of credit, but we've done, because on the one hand we've done quite a few episodes, but on the other hand I've forgotten a lot of those.
Yes.
So I don't think I would do that well.
But you could do like ranking although it would be tough to like, what did we actually call like ranking the Metroid games?
Right.
Is that what we called it?
I can't remember.
Or like casting Star Wars with Nintendo characters. That's probably what that one's called. Right?
Ranking the Kongs. That one I know for sure.
Sure. Ranking the Koopa kids.
Yeah.
There's another one.
Mm-hmm.
So like we could NCS Miss Carol. That's one.
Yeah, I think like 25.
Yeah,
I could work out. I think so.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
If you would like to check out more episodes that you can learn the names of and trounce your Metallica loving partner, you just go to patreon.com/Nintendo Cartridge Society, where if you are supporting us at the 8-bit or 16-bit levels, you get access to our once-a-month episodes of miniseries that we're putting out there. We are making our way currently through NCS Arcade, which is a series where we are playing games on Nintendo Switch Online and Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack that Mark and I have never beaten before.
Yeah, we just released an episode on Sonic the Hedgehog 2. That was a lot of fun to play and a lot of fun to talk about. A lot of fun to play could mean a lot of things.
Yeah, I suppose that could mean a lot of things. But so check that out. We didn't get to the emails that people wrote in about the game, so we will be releasing a supplemental little episode there on Patreon where we are addressing those questions and thoughts that you were also kind to email into us.
And then in May, we're going to be talking about Metroid.
This is a new announcement.
Yeah, this is a change.
Because we had been saying Battletoads and Battle Maniacs, but I test drove the first 2 levels of Battletoads and Battle Maniacs and said, oh no, we can't do this. So instead, we're going to be playing Metroid. Now, you may find yourself saying, you guys have never beaten Metroid before? And I gotta say, I have to admit, I've only beaten Metroid when entering the cheat code Justin Bailey to get, like decked out and like at the last little like save point there. So yeah,
and I've never beaten it in any form. But I have started, not to jump ahead, but I've started playing it.
Don't you jump ahead.
And it's interesting. It's been maybe 15 years since I've even attempted it.
Yeah.
And it is interesting to see how my thoughts have like either evolved on it or I'm just validating. Right. Yeah, that's right. Becoming more monkey-like as I play it. So
Mark's playing the game and he's less articulate about it now than he was 15 years ago.
That's not that surprising.
If you would like to join our Discord, you can email us at Nintendo Cartridge Society
at gmail.com.
Where we will be talking about Mark's de-evolving brain and, of course, Metroid as we get closer to it, and anything and everything. Also, just a reminder that my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle source book is available in comic book stores right now, issues 1 and 2. It is a encyclopedia of the IDW Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comics run, sort of to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Turtles and the launch of a new Ninja Turtles #1. Which is very exciting. I had the opportunity, Mark, to read the new Turtles #1 in advance of its release. It's good and it's exciting and cool stuff. But issues 1 and 2 of my source book are out there now. Issue #3 is going to come out June 5th, so pre-order that if you haven't already. It's a good one. Mark, let's get into what we've been playing this week. I just, of course, want to update that I continue to play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It says remake in the show notes, and I'm just going to change it right now to Rebirth. I have now logged 40 hours in this game.
Whoa.
I'm really putting in the time. I'm in the Corel prison at the moment. People who are playing the game know where that is, or if you've played the original Final Fantasy VII. And I'm finding like this part that I'm in right now, the like Gold Saucer Corel prison, to be like a little bit of a slog. And I kind of just can't wait to get to the next like big open area so I can explore that again.
I asked you this when you were just, a handful of hours in.
Yeah.
At the end of the first game,
yes,
there was like the promise of, I don't know, a little bit of like plot craziness.
Yes.
And now that you're 40 hours in, has that promise been fulfilled?
So when you asked me when I had started, there is a scene right at the beginning of the game, like before it kicks in with like the main characters, where you do get plot craziness, where you get characters who are clearly from an alternate timeline that deviates from the original Final Fantasy.
They like part their hair the other direction.
And they've got goatees. No, a character who is dead for the entirety of the story of Final Fantasy VII, Zack, shows up to Midgar with with Cloud like under his over his shoulder, right? He's bringing Cloud
Oh,
back.
that's fun.
And the city is like in ruins because of the event, like Avalanche doing what they do in the game normally, but seemingly without Cloud. Maybe Cloud actually is a part of it, but Zack has his own Cloud that he's like coming into the city with. It's unclear. And that was my only taste of that alternate timeline for like 35 hours. I have now seen 2 additional scenes that are like flashing into that like sideways reality, where Zack is alive and doing stuff. And I know that's going to be explored more and more as we go on. And it just like every time I get one of those scenes. First of all, I like Zack. He's a compelling character. He's like, what if Cloud was fun? But it's just like it's electric. Like I feel like I can't wait to see how they like either explain or refuse to explain what's going on here.
Yeah,
it's very cool, and I want more information so I can talk about it, and then I want someone that I can talk to about it. I know you'll listen, but and then okay, Mark. Now I can say I'm making good on the Endless Ocean Luminous.
Oh, your copy was available for pickup.
My copy was available for pickup. So it was supposed to be available for pickup on Saturday. I got an email on Saturday afternoon saying your pickup has been delayed. And I was like, uh-oh, I'm cursed here. But it was I was available to pick it up today, Monday. So I grabbed it on my way home from work. And I put in a couple hours, maybe like an hour and a half. And the story mode of this game is rough. Really, it's divided into like discrete little chapters, and each chapter is kind of more loading screen than gameplay. Like it's really quite bad. You have an AI companion that speaks with like a computer voice, right? Which I kind of assume actually is AI generated. The voice at any rate. And I'm just like, I wish it was just like they used a like actor to be your like AI companion. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only voice acted part in the game. You run into other divers and they just have like text printed on the screen. But so I'm finding the story mode to be mostly a bust. I did just do some like solo swim where I can just like scan the various sea life as I swim around, and that was more interesting. But I sure did need to have like a podcast going, or like Sarah called on her way home from work, and like I talked to her while swimming around and scanning stuff. It is a very low impact game, and I fear just like not quite interesting enough to be that low impact.
Yeah, that's interesting. That you're like saying that you wanted like a podcast and all that kind of stuff, only because my interaction with this game so far is limited purely to the Tetris 99.
Yeah, which we'll talk
Maximus
about.
Cup.
Yeah.
And that starts out, you're playing Tetris to kind of like spa music.
Yes.
Right. Which, in my mind, and not in a bad way, like I enjoyed that, but the Endless Ocean Luminous, to me, the way that I was thinking it would be played was almost in like a trance state, or like, oh, I'm just going to relax.
Yeah.
I'm just going to chill out in the ocean. So it's just interesting when you're saying it's like too low impact to do that.
Yeah.
Like it can't even do relaxing well.
Well, and that's like, at this point, if I want something, or if I like a relaxing video game experience, it does have to like kind of, I don't know, it's not really like smooth enough to be hypnotic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. Like there are sea creatures that like don't look great swimming around in animations that also don't look super great, and there's not really any kind of like texture to the water as you're swimming through it either. So like, I don't know, it just like it's not casting the spell that I think I want from this thing.
Yeah, that's disappointing.
But I'm gonna keep giving it another couple tries, see if I can like unlock some kind of magic in it. But like, I got to put 40 more hours into Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
It's also, when you were saying,
and then probably another 40 hours.
It's just what a relaxing video game experience can mean such different things, right? Like having something be like a Zen-like experience I don't know, when I think of just like zoning out in a video game, it's something like Dr. Mario, or you're just grinding in an RPG or something like that, right? It it doesn't necessarily mean
the same thing as like a relaxing experience,
yeah.
right? Yeah, like it's so weird because as you scan the sea life, you obviously get like new entries in your log for when you scan something new, and just or like a new kind of fish, right? But if you scan a fish that you've scanned its type before, but this specific fish you haven't, you like collect little bits of light from them, and you use the light to like repair the world coral. And like so there is like a little bar that goes up as you're doing this because you're collecting this light, so there is a way where it's like I'm accomplishing something, but it happens so slowly with all of this, and I don't feel like I have any real like agency or direction in how I'm doing it. It doesn't seem to matter what I scan or where I'm scanning it. It just fills up kind of the same no matter what. That like yeah, I just don't know where that like zen kind of experience comes from.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Let's just touch on Tetris 99 because you brought it up.
Yeah, I will say that for whatever reason, I was able to do it in 4 matches, which is really good for me. And 2 of those matches, I was in the top 15.
Hey,
which is a rare occurrence.
Did you get into the top 10?
I never got into the top 10. Like 14th is where I usually capped out. In fact, of the 2 times, I think both times I capped out at 14.
I see. So you were very strategic in saying you got into the top 15.
Well, normally I would say like if I'm in the top 25, sure, I feel pretty good about that. I would say I average probably in the low 40s, like 41, 42 or something like that. But yeah, I
think it's a good theme. I think it was a good theme. The last couple of these, I've been like, oh man, I'm not as good at this as I used to be. I got a win in this most recent Tetris Maximus Cup. Not within my first 100 points. Like I earned the points and then like kept playing a little bit. But I believe it was what got me from 200 to 300 points was one first place win, and I was like, all right, great, that's enough for me. And then Mark, you've been playing Animal Well.
I picked up Animal Well. It was a blip in the most recent like Indie World showcase. I think it was part of the sizzle reel, and so I didn't even really think much about it. But the reviews came out, were super glowing. Some people I follow on social media were super glowing about it, calling it a masterpiece. And so I picked it up. I think that all of that could totally be true. I have only played for maybe like half an hour, and I feel like the experience of playing this game is one of discovery. And so I have really fought my natural inclination when I don't know where to go or what to do in a video game, which is to like look it up. And so that's what I'm trying to do with this. I need to go back to it. The problem is that, I only have so much room in my heart for Metroidvanias.
And you are tasked with playing Metroid.
And I am playing, I'm also playing Metroid. And but everybody's saying it's so good. Like, I need to go back to Animal Well, but I think I have to be in the right state of mind for it. Where it's just like, I'm going to die a bunch. And when I die, I'm going to have to, it's a little bit like the Dark Souls experience where you make a bunch of progress, but if you die, you have to go back to the last, save point, and it can be pretty far back. And Lord knows, I'm not very good at remembering how I got to places in video games.
Or in life.
Even when I'm devolving.
I do feel like we're beating up on you too much in this episode. That one didn't feel fun for some reason.
But no, you're
still warming up to it. You're still finding your rhythm with it.
I'm trying to find the joy in it.
Have you made any organic discoveries in it to this point?
Well, yeah, because very early the game is throwing stuff at you where you're like, oh, I don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah.
And then you figure it out, and you find an alternate path, or you discover something, you're like, okay, that's how I defeat this enemy. And then so I kind of like got past that, and then I was making my way like exploring, and I encountered like another enemy, and it was like, oh, I have no idea how to defeat this.
Yeah.
And now I'm way back at the last save point.
Sure, yeah.
And that was where I was like, I'm just not in the mood to fight my way back.
I don't want to be punished right now.
Exactly.
Right.
So I don't know. It's possible it's just not for me. It's possible I need to be in the right mindset for it.
Yeah. I imagine that we'll be talking about this game more. It's one that is of interest to me, so I'm sure I'll be checking it out at some point. And then I just played a little absent-minded Super Smash Bros. Ultimate this weekend. Did just like a couple rounds through the arcade mode, and also did just like the spirit board for a while, and found that actually to be like meditative and like a good kind of like zone out kind of thing. But mostly, my gameplay time goes to Final Fantasy VII. Sarah and I did have two separate occurrences where I was playing and she was like, "Oh, I want to watch something on TV," and I was like, "Hey, no problem. I got this PlayStation Portal.
That's
I
right.
can just put this game into my hands, and you can watch the baseball game. You can watch Top Chef," and it was perfect. PlayStation Portal, once again, a perfect piece of hardware that has enabled me to play Final Fantasy more than I would be able to otherwise. All right, Mark, that's what we've been playing this week. Let's get into the new releases and what we might be playing next week.
Today, May 14th, Braid Anniversary Edition is released.
For real this time. Connor and I did mention it on that episode 2-ish weeks ago, and I had forgotten that it was delayed from that date to now this date. So now, Mark, I'm going to pick up Braid because it's a game that I like, and it's got new levels. Everything that I said about it before, but just like staple it onto this conversation.
I think I'm going to pick it up too. And the other thing I'm going to pick up this week is on Thursday, May 16th, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is released. This is another one that I'm bracing myself for because the stakes aren't that high, but it looks really cool. I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
But, in all the previews, everybody was talking up how you got to play with a notebook. It's really challenging. Right. I'm like, I don't know that I have that in me.
Now, when they say that, do they mean like that you have to have a DVD of the Notebook?
I assume that's what they mean. Or like the like you have to find a CD of the original cast recording of the Broadway musical that just opened not that long ago.
Right.
Which will be hard to do.
Right. Because have they even recorded that
I
yet?
don't know.
Right. You got to like open and then put out the cast recording.
Exactly.
But then all of the secrets to how to get through Lorelei and the Laser Eyes will be right there in the liner notes. If they even put out a physical copy, who knows?
And where am I going to find that?
Right.
So you understand my struggle then with
I do.
game.
Yeah.
I'm not going to buy it.
Right. You are going to buy it, but like you're not I've seen you take notes before. You take notes every time we record an episode.
I don't think you've ever seen me take notes before, but you're definitely trying to build me up.
No, I've seen you note things that I've said in real time. But I think you could do it. You could apply that to a video game, and you could get through it.
Yes, I think I could.
But it sounds like you got no faith in yourself.
I'm just not sure I want to.
Notebook,
I'm just not sure I want to.
Yeah, okay.
Again, it goes back to
Mark. I'm not buying you a notebook.
It just goes back. It goes back to Animal Well. It's like, yes, I absolutely could, like, muscle my way through this.
Yeah.
But is that how I want to spend my time gaming?
Right. Is there is there something coming up that you like are sort of saving your like frustration points for or anything like that?
No, I just don't have that much time to play video games, and so I look to actively avoid frustration points.
Right.
Is kind of how I am operating right now. So I don't know. I also feel like I'm in kind of like a funk. You know how when you finish a game, and then you're kind of scouting around for something new. I haven't found the thing that I'm really like glomming onto yet.
Right.
So just kind of a little bit of a gaming no man's land for me right now.
I know that will be me when I'm done with Final Fantasy. And like there are a bunch of games in my like sort of back catalog that like I know I need to get back to from like last year. Like there's that Star Wars game that I never played. We did a whole episode about backlog, so I don't need to relitigate all of this. But like I don't know if I want to visit some of those backlog games or if I want to just like roll for, because Mario RPG will be out, or Paper Mario will be out by then. Nintendo World Championships will also be like out around the same time.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of torn on what to do when that game is over. But also, like I said, probably got another 80 hours in that game. So
I also have no qualms about spending the money to pick these things up.
oh no, of course
it's
not.
just will I actually play it?
Who knows? That's the show is frequently about games that we buy but don't play.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get out of the new releases. Which brings us to a regular segment on our show. It is time for 433. In 1952, American composer John Cage wrote a piece called 433, wherein a performer or a group of performers didn't play their instruments for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. For the purposes of this show, our instruments are talking about Nintendo. So, for the duration of one performance, 433, Mark and I'll talk about something not at all Nintendo related, thus fulfilling the contract of the piece. Mark, you and I had soft plans to see the new Planet of the Apes movie this weekend. I had to reschedule, ask for a rain check because I had to do some edits on Turtles. But it got us both thinking about our movie theater preferences. How do you like to go see a movie in the theater? And we are not talking about snacks here.
No.
Important.
Yeah.
This is not about snacks.
I didn't used to like a matinee. There was something about walking outside after seeing a movie and having to be bright outside.
I still have a little bit of a problem with that. You like it now?
I like it fine.
Yeah.
I like it okay now. But I prefer to see a movie at night.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe at the twilight of evening, I'm walking into the theater.
Yeah.
You leave, it's dark.
I mean, the one thing I don't want is to be walking out of a movie past my bedtime. Do you know what I mean? If I'm walking out of a movie and it's like 11:45, I'm like, no. Maybe
that's why I've like matinees more.
Right.
Is because it guarantees that. I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw a midnight showing of a movie.
Oh, no. I mean, they barely even do them anymore, right?
That's true.
Because they're just like...
Everything starts at like 7.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is perfect.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want.
Do you know what I don't like is I don't like reclining seats.
You don't like reclining
I don't
seats.
mind the footrests.
Okay.
But I don't want to be like prone when I'm watching a movie.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And part of it is like it makes me feel vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like I don't like somebody could just like karate chop me.
Right.
You know?
Or like a cobra could bite you.
Exactly. And I need to be in a but yeah, there's something about it that makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't enjoy that.
I always like it when the recliner seats have separate controls for the foot thing and the actual like seat, because I think I'm with you in that. Like I want to recline like a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to lean back a little bit, especially if it's a nice big screen, right?
Yeah.
But I definitely don't want it to be as like far back as it could possibly be.
I don't want to like lay down.
That's just like not a position that like when I lay down, I lay on my side usually. I don't just like lay on my back like a psycho, staring straight forward.
But my husband's a big fan of the recliner chairs because he wants to see movies, but he always ends up falling asleep.
Sure. So he just wants to be comfortable so that he can fall asleep.
Yeah.
How do you feel about like so first of all, have you ever done a 4DX like where like the seats shake and like it sprays you with water and stuff?
Yeah, I saw accidentally saw Mission Impossible Rogue Nation.
Yeah.
In one of those.
Fantastic.
And it is they are very funny. Where like people are being like punched. Oh well. I guess we'll never know. We'll never know anything about your preferences.
Yeah, that's true. We will. Well, I mean, we talked a little bit about my preferences, not about 4DX. We were accompanied today by the Berliner Philharmoniker. All right, Mark, it's been a weird week. Let's get into the news.
So last week when we recorded our episode,
yeah,
we acknowledged that in just a few hours, Nintendo was going to have their like end of fiscal year financial reports, and who knew what news was going to come out of that?
Who knew?
Baby, there was a lot.
Yeah.
So shortly after we recorded, Nintendo released their financial earnings, and with that, we learned that Nintendo is officially acknowledging new hardware, and that new hardware is coming with a message from Nintendo president Shintaro Furukawa confirming that the company will reveal the Switch successor by the end of this fiscal year, which means sometime before the end of March 2025.
Mark, can you please read the statement, the tweet from Furukawa?
This is Furukawa.
I love it.
President of Nintendo. We will make an announcement about the successor to Nintendo Switch within this fiscal year. It will have been over 9 years since we announced the existence of Nintendo Switch back in March 2015. We will be holding a Nintendo Direct this June regarding the Nintendo Switch software lineup for the latter half of 2024, but please be aware that there will be no mention of the Nintendo Switch successor during that presentation.
So kind of two bombshell confirmations of things that we had previously assumed, right? A, there is a Nintendo Switch successor. We will be talking about it before the end of the year, the fiscal year, right? A, that. B, there will be a Nintendo Direct this June, but we will not be talking about the new Switch at that time. So exciting to get that confirmation. And you know that's what the first like full Nintendo Direct that we will have this year, right?
Did we not have a February Direct?
We had a partner showcase.
Crazy.
So like this is gonna be the first like real Nintendo Direct of the year. Like you know, presumably, I guess he doesn't say like it will be a full real thing, but like you know, regarding Switch games,
he calls it a Nintendo Direct.
Yeah, that's true. And it's the software lineup for the latter half of the year. So you know, that's it's two very exciting things that are being mentioned here.
Yeah.
Also, just in the most hilarious way, these two bombshells, just in a tweet, a no frills tweet with no graphic on it or anything. Just this is Furukawa. New Switch is real. Direct in June.
Yeah, I wonder what prompted doing this.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Do you think it's because they announced, you know, their projections for the next fiscal year and they felt like it needed some amount of explanation? Do you think they just didn't want to answer questions about it?
That like that's a great point. Is that if they have to address their projections for the rest of this fiscal year, they have to account for the fact that the Switch 2 is likely not coming out in that period. Which I guess I hadn't really considered that announced before the end of March might mean that the system doesn't come out until after this fiscal year.
Right. So I always I was looking back on it being like, well, that makes sense. They could just follow what they did for the Switch.
Totally.
Like October teaser.
Right.
We get a full blowout in January, release in March. But it's possible that we don't get, and maybe this is partly because they're not entirely sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're just saying, hey, by March we'll be ready to talk about it.
Right.
But yeah, maybe they're not sure if the software is going to be ready, because it seems like software is the holdup.
Sure.
That's what like all the reports point to. In the investor Q&A for someone asks, one of the investors asks about components for the Switch successor, and Furukawa says that they are not concerned about shortages of components, that like, you know, that time post-COVID or during COVID is in the past, and that isn't going to be a concern. So seemingly software is what the holdup is, and so maybe that'll determine when it actually gets announced, is when they think the software is ready to go.
Well, and I would also, you know, this is an argument that I've made a couple times on the show, but I think the Christmas factor is another thing. It didn't hurt them at all to announce the Switch before Christmas of 2016, because they were done selling Wii U's, right? Like they weren't going to cannibalize themselves. Now they are in a different position where if they have not done this is one kind of announcement, but the fact that there is no video, there's not even a graphic, means that this is the kind of information that is not going to get to normies, right? that people buying Switches for their kids aren't going to hold off because they know a new Switch is coming. So I think they still want one more Christmas that they can sell through the Switches. And if they'd been able to announce and reveal the new thing earlier this year, then fine. But like you get late enough in the year and you're like, I don't want to, cannibalize another Christmas.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because the forecast for the number of Switches they want to sell this fiscal year is 13.5 million. This last year they sold 15.7.
Yeah.
So it's a decline, but for a console in its 9th year,
Unheard
that's
of.
a ton, a ton of Switches. And he acknowledges, one, that is going to be tough, but that they're challenging themselves, to hit that.
Right.
And two, that it is possible that by talking about the next hardware, the sales for the current hardware is going to soften. So it is something that they are very aware of. And so, like you said, yeah, maybe we'll see what they have for the end of the year.
Right.
Right? Like games wise, hope maybe in June. Traditionally, we had a June and a September direct. Who knows this year?
Right. I would guess no September direct.
And so it,
but like a beefy. I think this June direct will be bigger than a June direct usually is, which is kind of amazing because those can be some of Nintendo's biggest events. But I do think this will be the only thing we get for this year.
So and he also investors were asking him about the kind of like slowdown in Switch software.
Yeah.
And, hey, this is obviously a lighter year. Is that because you're turning your attention to the Switch successor? So it's all factors. And it's like, how are you going to sell 13.5 million Switches this year? And you're right. They probably don't want to stomp all over their holidays.
Right.
So it may not be until early next year that we hear anything concrete about it. Because one more thing, just to add to that. In his message on Twitter, the statement says...
This is Furukawa.
He says, we announced the existence of Nintendo Switch back in... And really, at that point, it was just the NX. In March 2015. 2 years.
Yes.
Before
right.
the Switch was actually released. And 18 months, basically, before the Switch was revealed in any form.
Yeah.
And so... like the mind reels, right?
Like
how long?
How long are we gonna have to wait for this thing? But I mean, we've not done like an updated like predictions as to like when we actually think the Switch 2 will come out. I think it's gotta come out sometime in like the middle of next year, right?
That would make sense. I mean, they had so much success with the Switch time period.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he was also asked if the like 13.5 million hardware sold included numbers for like a Switch successor, and he said no, it's just the Nintendo Switch. They could always change their projections,
right?
But that means that it's not coming out in the early March timeframe, or at least they're not planning on it.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit because last year it sold 15.7. They're talking about this year 13.5. So it's like you say, a drop of about 2 million. But last year saw the release of 2 system-selling games, right? Tears of the Kingdom and Super Mario Brothers Wonder. Like those are both huge heavy hitters, and you could arguably throw Pikmin 4 into there as well. Not as a system seller necessarily, but as just like a big release.
Well, the other thing that he points out, or in the investor Q&A, and that I would also throw in there, is the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Great point, yes. But so a drop of 2 million units says to me that they still have something big for this year to drive sales going into the end of the year.
Right.
What?
Because you're like, let's say we live in a world where Metroid Prime 4 comes out at the end of the year.
This is exactly what I'm thinking.
Is that a system seller?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I mean, it could be you know what it could be? It could be an OLED seller. That people who have never upgraded their Switch, although like I guess if you're like that plugged in or like that like the Metroid player type is also maybe the type to know that there's a new system coming out.
But that is also something that he talks about, where it's not just selling to new people. It's about getting people who own a Switch to own another Switch, to buy, like, to upgrade to an OLED or like that sort of thing. Also, they have done bundles, but they've never done like a straight up price drop.
That's true.
And who knows if, like, are they willing to sacrifice the revenue in order to hit that 13.5 million? I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, it feels like they're going to have something. There's going to be some levers that they're going to have to pull in order to reach that goal.
I just wonder what that is. I mean, this is like the exciting stuff from Nintendo, where it's like they need some sort of big deal. What are the big deals at this point?
Especially when you've already sold so many. So we found, like, we learned that the Switch has now sold like 141.32 million units. And so new software, maybe, but you already have 141 million people who can, or like systems out there that can buy software without having to upgrade again.
Right.
So yeah, what is that driver? I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to find out.
Yeah. And I think we probably find out in the next month. Right? Like we'll have this direct in June. I think that'll give us a pretty clear picture of the rest of the year.
Do you think that it's possible that there is another like form factor coming this year?
Like hardware?
Yeah.
I don't
like a new 2DS. You know what I mean? Like end of life.
Yeah, like a Switch Lite OLED edition or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the Switch Lite, because it does raise the question of like, what could that possibly be?
Totally, yeah. Well, and that wouldn't just be swallowed up by the next thing, and also, like, do you really want to be running a second set of like new hardware things? Like, do you really want to launch two separate SKUs of what is basically Switch in the next, like 9 months? Probably not.
Yeah, one thing that is not Switch related, but that you could see them doing, is another like hardware thing. I don't think the Game & Watches. I don't think the anniversary Game & Watches, like, I'm sure they sold fine to enthusiasts, but they didn't have the, I would say, mania around them that the NES Minis did, or like the SNES Minis to a lesser extent. I feel like I don't know what that.
Well, no, I think they also just like properly manufactured those. Like, now you can get the NES, the Super NES, for below retail price. It was really just that they underestimated the demand for them.
Yeah, in the beginning, those NES ones were like insane. But I don't know what it would be like. I don't think an N64 Classic Edition is in the cards.
Yeah.
But what could that? They have used like novelty hardware to goose revenue before.
Totally.
So
well, and what I'm fascinated to see whatever that is. I can't wait to buy whatever pointless garbage they say, like, hey, you need this. It's the NES Zapper, and you can play Duck Hunt with it. We figured out a way to make light gun games work. I would love, but yeah, I mean, it's who knows, and I am ready to be dazzled by whatever way they choose to, inspire my nostalgia buying.
I also think it is genuinely possible if they don't have some killer app that they're sitting on, and they are anticipating to be able to goose sales of the Switch like some other way.
Yeah.
And that the rest of the year kind of, like coasts along on the level of the Luigi's Mansion 2 HD and, Thousand Year Door. I do think we're probably due for at least one more original game, but does it come from Nintendo, or does it come from,
That's a good question.
Good feel, in a Princess Peach Showtime situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And like, Wither the Pokemon Company, like,
yeah, seriously, a year without Pokemon.
Yeah,
eerie.
It is. It's quiet, right? You go outside and you're like, Is there really no Pokemon game coming out this year? And I understand that the new Legends game will be coming out in this fiscal year. But yeah, it's all very like, well, what's going on out here?
Very strange.
Do you think this is a thought that crossed my mind? So the Hades 2, currently in early access, just available to play on Steam. The original Hades was on consoles first, on Switch. Do you think that possibly the developers of Hades have said that they're not going to have a 1.0 version out before the end of this year? Is it possible that they have the same deal with Nintendo now, with Hades 2 that they did with Hades 1, and it will launch with the new Switch?
Oh, interesting.
Which Nintendo also has a history of doing with indie games, because the Shovel Knight scenario, Spectre of Torment, first available on Switch, was a launch day game, and that was a couple weeks before it was available anywhere else.
That's right.
So, like, that would be another, just talking of, like, killer apps for new hardware, that's pretty close. Version 1.0 of Hades 2, only available on Switch 2.
I'm definitely a feather in their cap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been bouncing around this this news piece. So.
Well, one thing that I just thought was interesting, I don't really know that there's a ton of news here or anything for us to parse out of it necessarily, but during the investor call, a person asked, quote, regarding the successor to Nintendo Switch, is there any special intention behind calling it a successor? Looking back at past hardware announcements, Wii U was described as a, quote, system to succeed Wii, and Nintendo Switch as a, quote, game platform with a brand new concept. This time it is described as a successor to Nintendo Switch. Is this an indication of your intent to continue with the gameplay and concept of Nintendo Switch? You said there will be an update during this fiscal year. At that time, will you talk about its launch timing and specifications? So Furukawa doesn't really answer the question. He dodges. He says, we can't say anything more about the successor to Nintendo Switch. For today's announcement, we determined that the most appropriate expression to use was successor to Nintendo Switch. Information will be released in stages leading up to the launch, as we have done with previous new hardware announcements. But anything that we want to read too deeply into based on the wording successor to Nintendo Switch, or lack of meaning in that term?
Well, so I think what we can divine is that they are not calling it, as the original Switch was called, a game platform with a brand new concept. They are not touting that this is a brand new concept. So all we can really get from this is what they're not saying, right? They are not touting this as something brand new.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Which it sort of just leads back to the sort of vanilla speculation that, like, the next Switch will be a Switch.
Yeah.
It'll just be more powerful and have some other kind of features, but will still, in its heart, be a handheld and home console hybrid machine that plays games using, like, sort of traditional button inputs and motion controls, and a touch screen from time to time. I think they are broadcasting here that they're not reinventing the wheel.
One last.
Is there anything you take from that?
No, I think that's a great reading of it. The last thing that I wanted to point out from the financial results is that we learned that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has now sold 61.97 million copies as of the end of March, making it the best-selling Nintendo game that wasn't a pack-in. So Wii Sports sold like 82 million copies, but I feel like it was a pack-in title in the US and some other countries.
Yeah,
so
I'm still tempted to give it to Wii Sports, because Wii Sports sold a lot of Wiis.
I mean, that is definitely true.
I mean, like, the reason that it was able to penetrate a market that wasn't buying Nintendo systems before is because of Wii Sports. So
yeah, and would we take away, like, sales from Super Mario World because it was a pack-in,
or Super Mario Brothers? Like, no,
right?
Like, it's yeah, I don't think so.
How crazy in hindsight is it that Super Mario World was included with your purchase
So it wasn't included with mine. I didn't have Super
Oh, was
Mario
that not
World.
at launch? Was
Yeah.
it not a launch thing?
Well, I didn't get my Super NES at launch.
Oh, okay.
So I don't. I actually don't know. You saying it right now that it was a pack-in game, I'm like, yeah, that sounds right. But mine did not come with it.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't at launch. Maybe it was one of the things that they used to like sweeten the deal later, like they do now with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Yeah. I mean, I always thought it was weird that Mario 64 was not a pack-in game with the Nintendo 64. Which, I mean, there were only 2 games at launch. So I guess they needed you to buy something. But to me it was like, oh yeah, whatever the cost of the Nintendo 64 is, like, go ahead and add 70 to that because you're gonna need to buy Mario 64 as well.
Do you mean that you? Okay. I'm looking it up.
Mark's looking it up
because I'm curious
as to whether it was ever a pack-in game.
I think when it launched, it was the Super Nintendo. It included Super Mario World.
So your question just being like, isn't it crazy that like one of the best games on the system not only launched with the system but also came packed in?
Kind of, and also like the Nintendo. I mean, I guess they kind of did it with Wii Sports too, but we're just like in some ways giving it away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the premier title for this system at launch, we're just including it in there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think especially at the time of the Super NES, like the NES was still so like widely, it was everywhere, right? Like everyone had an NES.
Yeah.
And they would continue putting out games for it for a long time after the Super NES came out. So yeah, I think like they just needed something to sweeten the transition over to the new hardware.
Well, here's something Switch 2 related, or maybe not. Midori, someone who has leaked information about Atlus and Sega games in the past, is claiming that Nintendo is working on a project with the codename King O. And the only reason this codename is notable is that Breath of the Wild's codename was King, and the Switch 2's codename is allegedly Ounce.
OUNCE.
Which could explain the O.
Sure, so that King O could be a
Switch 2 version
right
of Breath of the Wild.
Right.
This is interesting. But here's what I'll say.
Yeah.
Is that, when we talked at the beginning in the cold open about this being like an open season on Switch 2 rumors.
Right.
My mind.
Just get ready. Like every single time that someone be like, is Bandai Namco working on a Switch 2 game? The answer is yes, but let's feed on these breadcrumbs.
Well, my mind also just like cast back to before the Switch was released.
Yeah.
And there were major outlets reporting on Pokemon Stars. And you might be asking yourself, what is Pokemon Stars?
Right.
It's not a thing.
It doesn't exist.
But the speculation was that
we made it up.
It was
You've been had.
It was a third version of Pokemon Sun and Moon,
right,
that was being developed for the Switch. And hey, maybe it was an internal like development thing that they used for testing before they started work on Sword and Shield Let's Go or something like that.
I think Pokemon Stars is just like too logical of a conclusion. They're like, Sun, Moon, Stars. That'd be the third one, right? That's what you would call it. And everyone was like, yes, that is what you would call it.
Yes.
Let's call it that.
Yeah. So when I'm reading, this sort of stuff, hey, could some Switch version of Breath of the Wild be in the works? Absolutely. It makes total sense. Could it also just be wind passing through, the rumor reads, because we're going to get a ton of this over the next 18 months, and a lot of this stuff isn't going to pan out.
Yeah, I think over the next year, honestly, I think that a year from now, we may even be playing Switch 2. But I also think that, I don't believe we're going to have to wait 18 months, but maybe we do. Maybe, who knows?
Last week, we discussed the ESRB leaking a mysterious new Switch title called Nintendo World Championships NES Edition. We didn't know at the time what it was, but hey, now we do.
And we knew like the next morning, right?
Right.
Like,
This was another one.
Right.
This was another one where we recorded it 12 hours later.
Right.
All of it was known. But how is this different from the NES remix games from the Wii U and the 3DS? That was kind of our question.
Yeah.
Out of last week, and the answer is it's a focus on speedrunning, which is kind of fun to see Nintendo leaning into that
and leading into. They're doing both. Yeah, it's so speedrunning and also like the competitive aspect of it. NES Remix and NES Remix Volume 2 did not have any multiplayer components, and certainly didn't have any like there were no like online leaderboards or anything like that. The experiences were so bite-sized that like it kind of just it was you competing against yourself, right? Whereas this actually has like split screen local multiplayer for you to like compete against people in real time on the couch with you.
Yeah, so 8 people can compete locally in party mode, and then you can also play online and enter into world championship mode to submit your best time in like challenges that rotate every week. But it's over 150 speedrun challenges taken from 13 NES games. Those games are Balloon Fight, Donkey Kong, Excite Bike, Ice Climber, Kid Icarus, Kirby's Adventure, Metroid, Super Mario Brothers 1, 2, and 3, and The Lost Levels, and The Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link.
So the original NES remix included 16 NES games, and then the Volume 2 included 12 additional games. This is sampling from fewer games than the original NES remix, and NES remix did a thing where some of the challenges would be like a character in the wrong game, right? Like that you would be Samus like rolling around part of Kid Icarus, or you'd had to play part of Punch Out as Kirby, so that is not that sort of stuff also does not seem to be present here, which is a little bit of a bummer. Like whatever, that's the remix branding, I understand, but the fact that it has fewer games in it, that's the part that makes me go like, dang, I wish it at least had the 16 that, or at least that number. Although it's kind of leaving out some of the duds, right? There's no Clue Land in here, for example, but it does have Ice Climber, so yeah, I don't know.
I did like the kind of trailer for it that they premiered.
Yeah, it was
like,
nice.
The little video where they had people from the 2015 and 2017 Nintendo World Championships kind of talking about their experiences and all that kind of stuff. And then at the very end, the winner of the 1990 Nintendo World Championship shows up.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty cute.
Well, and it is a nice, and again, we'll like see when the game actually comes out how much it like embraces the like real world history of what the Nintendo World Championships have been in the 3 separate times that they've happened. But like, I don't know, it's neat whenever Nintendo can pull stuff in from their not in-game worlds and put them in games. Like it's always a minor thrill to see like Hanafuda being featured in a Nintendo game, or like the Ultra Hand, or which is like the sort of like grabby claw thing that they used to sell in the 70s, or the Ultra Machine, the baseball pitching thing, in games. And this is like another avenue for that, where it's like, here's a thing that we did which is games related, but now like here is a game of that.
Ooh, I just really hope it has some amazing title screen music. I'm just thinking of the NES Classic Edition,
God, yes.
And like the SNES Classic Edition, and that title screen music was so good.
Yeah,
I'm really hoping that this continues that.
Yeah, I do too. What do you make of the fact that NES Edition is part of the name of this thing? I don't know if we talked about this last week.
I don't think we did. I don't read too much into it. Nintendo, I feel like of the retro stuff, Nintendo loves to do the NES.
Yeah.
But not any other system.
Right. Like the Super NES is like sort of second tier nostalgia, and then like I don't think they know how to weaponize the Game Boy nostalgia. That's not Pokemon.
Right.
So I think they just don't.
Yeah. Like I have no expectation that we ever get a sequel to this.
Yeah.
This feels like a gap year
Totally.
filler.
Totally. And I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah. Comes out on July 18th. Digital is $30, and then you can also buy it physically in a deluxe set that is $60. It includes a physical version of the game, so game cart, a set of 5 collectible pins, 13 art cards commemorating each of the featured NES games, and then a replica of the, like, they call it fabled gold-colored NES game pack for that's like display only.
Right. Which that is the item that made me say, I'm buying the physical version of this, which maybe I was contractually obligated to do
Right.
anyway.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. If there was a digital version, you could probably, I think you could have bought that.
Yeah,
and
I
that
think so
would have fulfilled your obligation.
But also, nuts to that, I want that gold cart.
Where did you pre-order it from?
I pre-ordered it from Best Buy.
I wonder, do you think it's like going to be hard to get?
So
GameStop
version? Sold out of it right away. But you know, who knows? Like their pre-order sold out right away. Who knows how many they had? And you know, GameStop is usually pretty good about holding some pre-orders or holding some actual units for day of purchases. But it was up and available for, you know, maybe like half an hour on Best Buy before I actually got to it. Half an hour may be generous. I think it was available for a while. So yeah, I don't know. The market for this seems like pretty narrow, right? Like I don't think a ton of people are going to be rushing out to get this. But I mean, the fact that the deluxe set is only $60 is you know, made it like a no-brainer for me to buy into that.
Yeah. This is also being released in Japan, and their deluxe edition comes with the previously Nintendo Switch Online subscriber exclusive Famicom controllers.
Right, which is incredible because I believe a pair of controllers will run you $60 all by itself.
Pretty incredible.
Yeah.
It also raises the question, hey, the NES was not a thing in Japan, where it was a completely different system called the Famicom.
Yeah.
So what on earth is this called in Japan? And Maisai Ace from the Discord let us know that it's called Nintendo World Championships Famicom World Championships.
Good. I gotta say, Nintendo putting out a game here with absolutely atrocious SEO. Nintendo World Championships NES Edition. You type that into a search bar, you're going to get 1,000 different things before you get to this game.
It's always interesting to me when they release something like this, which is targeted to the olds.
Yeah.
You know, like, it is absolutely for, I mean, I guess actually, I take that back.
Oh.
But only in the
We're
sense,
taking it back.
Only in the sense that speedrunning is
the providence of the young.
Yes, because the old people's fingers.
We've always said this, of course.
We've always said
on the show. Speedrunning is the providence of the young.
Yeah. Before, like, from episode 1, we had T-shirts printed with that,
right?
Because it's just something we say all
the
time.
Maybe we haven't been saying it on the show, but we wear the shirts every episode.
Speedrunning is the providence of the young because their fingers are not brittle and old.
Right. And their brains not yet de-evolved.
Not yet de-evolving. But yeah, so I mean, I feel like there are probably a lot of younger people who didn't live through the NES era,
right,
but are familiar with some of these games through speedrunning.
Speedruns, yeah.
And so maybe the speedrunning hook is their way to try to make it not just targeted to people who lived through the NES era.
But I mean, the thing that makes me so excited about this is they're like, this is just like another example of like Nintendo embracing some weird old thing and like putting out a new game. Like it feels like Famicom Detective Club. It feels like the Mario Paint tools showing up in Super Mario Maker. Like I don't know. It is the thing about Nintendo that I love, that they have this super long institutional memory of like things that they'd worked on, things that they were a part of for decades, and they can just resurface them because like they hang on to their talent, and like people have been there this whole time, and like it remains important to them. Their history remains important to them, even as they're marching towards a new console.
Yeah. I mean, just as a very basic example, the people who created Super Mario Brothers are still working on Mario games today.
Yeah.
Which is pretty remarkable, especially in the game industry as it exists right now. I will say, I feel this is one of the sweatier versions of that to me, because the Nintendo World Championships happened 3 times.
Right.
1990, then this huge gap to 2015. They did it again in 2017.
Right.
They haven't done it since. So it's not like it's like beloved institution, Nintendo World Championships.
But I would argue the same is true of Mario Paint or Famicom Detective Club, right? Like the fact that some of these things are like weird little curiosities, and not like they can put their own stuff up on a pedestal and be like, no, this is a neat thing that we did, and I will be there to embrace it basically every time, I think.
In the past few months, we on the show we've talked about Square Enix now and again as a company that is going through hard times and has worked to realign their strategy. The latest update is that Square Enix has announced they're going to lean in hard into a multi-platform strategy.
Right. Well, and all of this kind of comes on the heels of a sort of disastrous financial reporting of the previous year, where they wrote down a bunch of losses, and cut either scope or cut some games in development entirely.
Yeah. And them saying that they were going to focus on developing fewer games,
right,
and try to get out of the same space as indie titles.
Right.
They don't want to compete with indie titles. They are going to put more eggs into fewer baskets, which scares me when Square Enix has not been having a ton of success.
Undiversify, which is exactly the worst business advice.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes, but this is how they say specifically, quote, for HD titles, the group will aggressively pursue a multi-platform strategy that includes Nintendo platforms, PlayStation, Xbox, and PCs, especially in regards...
Is Square Enix developing games for the successor to the Nintendo Switch? The answer is yes.
Yes, especially this is still the quote, especially in regards to major franchises and AAA titles, including catalog titles. It will build an environment where more customers can enjoy our titles. And you're right. Like it's been a bad year for Square Enix. I would say that their PlayStation 5 exclusive strategy has not particularly paid off for them.
Yeah, I mean, then that's a tough place to be in, especially considering that in the last financial year they put out 2 huge Final Fantasy games, which in itself may be a mistake, right? To put out 16 and 7 Rebirth within 6 months of each other is just kind of a what are you doing moment. But they did it, and both were PlayStation 5 exclusive, and so have not had the kind of returns. But they're Forspoken also came out within the last year, and that game basically bombed. They had that Foam Stars was the name of that game.
Yep.
That they thought was going to be a multiplayer hit for them, and did nothing. So I think there are a lot of kind of examples of whiffs, or at least commercially underperforming games from Square Enix's last year.
Yeah, Square Enix really seems to go through really dramatic TikTok cycles.
Yeah,
where I feel like we're kind of back in early PS3 era where they're just trying to figure out what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do it.
Look, we spent last generation making the bouncer, so we got to figure out what this generation is.
So I'm rooting for them, right?
Me too.
But I think they got caught in this weird no man's land where Japan has, for all intents and purposes, just rejected the PlayStation 5.
Right.
And they really were focusing their franchises on trying to appeal to a worldwide audience, making Final Fantasy 16 more like Game of Thrones.
Right.
And that did not pay off for them.
Right.
And so what do you do?
Right. And both Final Fantasy 16 and Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth are led with the English language voice track, right? That's how the lips are synced. Those are the performances that are being captured, which that's the first time that was that way for those games. Maybe 7 Rebirth was also, but just had not been the case before. But it's so interesting to consider that just to compare it to Capcom, right? And Capcom is doing great right now. and they had kind of a similar strategy this last year of like making their games a little bit more like worldwide focused, right? Like they had Street Fighter 6 and Final Fantasy 16 came out within weeks of each other. And like I don't know that Street Fighter 6 sold better than Final Fantasy 16, but like I don't know, just the last couple of years seems to have been kinder to Capcom than to Square Enix.
I was listening to Axe of the Blood God last week, and they were talking about this, and they brought up Capcom,
Yeah.
and they were saying that one of the big strengths that Capcom has compared to Square Enix is they have the RE engine,
Right.
which all of those games that like from Resident Evil Village to Street Fighter 6, like all of these are built on the same engine, and that engine is so scalable.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and that their argument was that is part of like Capcom's secret sauce, is because they can develop Monster Hunter Rise for Switch on the same engine that they're developing
Right.
Street Fighter 6, versus like Square Enix has always struggled with tools.
Yeah. And it is interesting that like Capcom has a handful of these like mega franchises, and like with Square Enix, you're really like, well, you've got one mega franchise that's Final Fantasy, right?
Is it a mega franchise anymore?
I mean, that's a great point. Is like, does it actually? Remake was an entry in a mega franchise, right? And like it sold incredibly well. And 14 obviously has its own momentum. But yeah, that's a good question. Like 15, 16, and Rebirth. I mean, this is just like you say, it's sort of the bust period for Final Fantasy.
And 15 sold well, right? Like
Yeah.
15 sold well, but did people like it, or did that mean anything? Like 16 is a completely different thing.
Right.
Yeah, I Dragon Quest 12. Honestly, I think this could not come at a better time for Dragon Quest 12, because it seemed like they were trying to make Dragon Quest 12. I mean, we only got a teaser for it,
Right.
but it just,
We've just seen a logo.
but it just chilled my heart
Right.
to be like, ugh, are they going to try to like Final Fantasy 16 this?
Right.
And try to make Dragon Quest more appealing to worldwide audiences, whatever that would end up meaning.
Right.
And I fear for what that could have turned out like, and I hope that this refocusing kind of like is good for Dragon Quest 12.
I mean, I hope so too, but it does make me fearful for the Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake that was announced at the same time that we saw
Right.
that Dragon Quest 12
yeah.
logo like 100 years ago, because that falls squarely in the like bandwidth of game that they should not be putting out anymore.
Yeah,
per their own like marching orders.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that game is probably safe because it'll sell a ton in Japan.
In Japan, that's a good point. Yeah,
and they really need that.
I mean, it is they. I love that they've supported like the Switch the way they have, but I wonder if the Octopath Traveler 2 Triangle Strategy Live Alive, if that strategy has paid off for them at all, because like those games sell like maybe 1 million copies, but I think they're way more expensive to make than we have like a concept of, because the art style looks like it's kind of low rent, or like it's pixel art still, but in this like glorious HD engine with like great lighting effects. Like I wonder how that is actually played out for them.
Well, it's also interesting that they talk about doing a multi-platform strategy, with PC being a big part of that. And Octopath Traveler 1 at release was a Switch exclusive, and sold very well. But it also released at a kind of like Halo time.
Yeah, absolutely.
For
yes.
like Switch software to release, versus Octopath Traveler 2 did release on, I think, everything multi-platform, and the sales were not as good as on the Switch alone. So,
well, and I do think,
what does that mean?
I mean, I think some of the luster has fallen off of the HD 2D as like an aesthetic, just because like we've seen a couple games in that one now, and also
it's like the Mario plus Rabbids problem.
Totally, yeah. That like, yeah, thanks, we got that. We still haven't beaten the first one because no one can. It's impossible. Yeah. So it's sad to see like what's happening with Square Enix, but it seems like this is just like a mirror of what's happening like industry wide in some ways, right? Like we had this news about Xbox and Microsoft last week closing down a couple of the studios from within, the big like tranche of studios that they bought in previous years, where it's just like uh, it's a tough business, and like especially in the case of Microsoft, spending $70 billion to buy Activision Blizzard means that they like don't have them. I mean, $70 billion is so much money that like I don't really know how you ever recoup that.
Well, it's also like, you spent 70 billion, they released their financial results, and it's like Activision Blizzard makes up basically 100% of the gaming revenue for
Right.
Microsoft Gaming now.
Right.
And I think Xbox would have like made a pittance, like it was like $2 million, or like
Right.
it would have lost money if Activision Blizzard wasn't there. At that point, it's like, well, then what? This is the question that's been going around the internet. Like, what is Xbox at this point, or is Microsoft just the world's biggest third-party publisher?
Yeah, I mean it's a great. Well, oh man, the whole Xbox thing is so strange because like they. There have been reports going around this last week that they're still figuring out whether Call of Duty is going to be on Game Pass, which means they don't have that like financially worked out. Like it is obviously a huge blow to them if they can't sell Call of Duty to everyone for $70 because it's on Game Pass, where it's like, but that's also like their identity is like all of our first party stuff appears on Game Pass. But like, is that really what Game Pass is good for? And like, I don't. It's too much revenue to lose out on.
Is Nintendo's secret weapon this holiday Call of Duty on Switch? Does that 10-year contract
maybe
that Nintendo signed with Microsoft
maybe
to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo hardware kick in this year?
And will it sell just fine because Microsoft is too chicken to put it on? Not just chicken, but like they need the revenue to not put it on Game Pass. Like, I think it's totally possible.
But yeah, it's been a total. So it's. I mean, we've talked about it being a weird year as far as like game releases on all the platforms, but also just like a bummer year for games. It just feels like a down year.
Yeah, totally.
You got like Microsoft. Like, there's been so many layoffs this year. Square Enix just announced that in the US and Europe they're going to be downsizing. Like, it just does not.
Yeah, and some of that is like the normal contractions in the market after because video games had a boom during COVID, right? But I also think that like what the consolidation in the market or in the on the development side is just bad. Like when and this is something that we talked about as it was happening, where it's like this is a huge spend of cash, which means that that's not money that will be spent to make games, and will need to be recouped in some way. But yeah, so it's been a sad, weird week for Microsoft specifically. But like this is something that I think everyone that said like, well, this is bad, they shouldn't buy Activision Blizzard, shouldn't be allowed to buy Activision Blizzard. Like this is why.
Yeah. Well, finally, Atlus is delisting the original Shin Megami Tensei V and all of the game's DLC from the eShop starting on June 13th. So if you've already purchased it, of course, you'll still be able to download it, but you won't be able to download the game anymore because Shin Megami Tensei V Vengeance, which was announced at the partner showcase, releases on June 14th. So I guess they haven't said, but I guess they think it's redundant to have both available for sale. I tried to look up if like you could buy the original Dragon Quest 11 now that Dragon Quest 11 is out, or Dragon Quest 11S is out. And as far as I can tell,
sorry, what game?
Well, it's not just for the Nintendo Switch.
No,
we're talking about.
There's still more to that title.
See, I feel like this is a different rule. I feel like we determined previously that if it wasn't for if we weren't talking about the Nintendo Switch version, we were talking about it collectively, that we didn't have to say the whole title.
See, I think that's true when we're just talking about Dragon Quest 11 holistically.
But if it's Dragon Quest XI S Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition,
then I think we need to say the whole title.
Okay. So I tried to look up if Dragon Quest XI was available now that Dragon Quest XI S Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition for many systems is available, and as far as I could tell, it's not.
Sure.
But I don't know if did Persona 5 get delisted when Persona
Royal
5
came out?
Golden? Oh yeah, Royal. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard for me to care about this. I like it.
Don't get me wrong. I don't care. I just couldn't. I was just trying to figure out trying to figure out what the deal is.
Well, it's just funny because it's like I'm sure there are purists out there that no, I want to play the original version of Shin Megami Tensei V, and I'm like, well, just play the better one. They beefed it up. They made it a better game. But I guess I can understand the desire to go back to an earlier version. All right, Mark, let's get out of the news. All right, that is going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. I'm laughing about us. I feel like, no, I don't care. I don't care about this. Yeah, you can join our Discord. All you gotta do is email us and we will send you an invitation. Anthony DeLuca made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8BitBetty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Eller saying thank you for listening. Bye.